everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and I'm here today to do some cake dyeing. Today's video is sponsored by Shelby and I am going to be dyeing 200 grams of Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn for her today. This yarn is 100% Peruvian Highland wool, non-superwash, and it is perfect for cake dyeing because since colors absorb a little slower to it overall, you can get some good colored penetration towards the center. I wound each 100 gram cake really loosely. And the way I achieved that was by winding a cake directly onto my ball winder and then winding a second one to get them as loose as possible. Now, the colorways will not be identical, but I tried to match the size of the cakes as much as I could. For the dye today, I weighed out 2 grams of Dharma's Twilight Gray and then dissolved the dye directly into some hot water. I could have made a stock solution, but I didn't have enough on hand, so that's why I went about it this way. I have been dying to do this kind of colorway with Twilight Gray and cake dyeing for a really long time. If you remember the first time I tried to break it, it resulted in stunning colors. I have a cool dye bath that is 24 cups of water, and I just added the 2 grams of dye that we mixed up in an unspecified volume of water. Since we are planning on having all of the color absorbed to the yarn in the end anyway, the total volume of water doesn't entirely matter. The total amount of dye on the yarn will be the same regardless. What the volume could make a difference is on the rates that the colors absorb. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's no acid in here yet, and I have not yet turned on the heat. We've got our 2 yarn cakes, and I am just slowly holding them in so they can start submerging. This could take a little while. In general, I find wool of the Andes doesn't have like a ton of lanolin, so it does sort of absorb liquid fairly quickly, but you know, pushing it in all the way. There's a lot of air in these cakes. You can see these bubbles coming up. I'm not really squeezing as much as just sort of pressing this a bit below the surface. I'm going to squeeze a little bit, which will bring some of the other colors in towards the center. I am going to turn on the heat so we can start heating things up. And once we have submerged, yeah, I'm just going to keep slowly pressing as things heat up so we can get this submerged. But I don't know if you can already see. When the yarn sort of pops up, it looks a little purpley at first. Like you can see some purple in there. But then as soon as it lifts up, you see that more gray tone. And I think it's because the blues strike faster than that pink purple color. So with any luck, we will see something really stunning. Whether or not we achieve the extreme breaking on cake dyeing, I think that the results will be stunning no matter what. I'm just crossing my fingers that we can get that elusive blue and purple. Over the course of the last 2 minutes or so, I would press one and then the other to try to get them as submerged as I could. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. Again, there's probably about 25 cups of water in here. So this is actually less acid than what I used for the very first dip dyeing I ever did. But we do want those blue tones. If we want to see the colors break, we want to see those tones start to absorb. Oops, I didn't mean to turn it. Oh well, I guess I'm turning them a little bit. Okay, they're pretty well submerged. I am going to let everything sort of sit and continue to heat up for 10 minutes and then we'll come check in. Let's check in. Oh, that's looking very purple compared to what we see there. Fingers crossed. I'm debating. We're starting to see some movement on the surface, but it's still not super hot yet. I think I will go ahead and add 1 tablespoon of vinegar, which brings us to a total of 3 and 24 cups of water. This is similar to those ratios that I use in the dip dyeing videos. And I'm going to heat this another 10 minutes. After those 10 minutes, we can see some really nice color saturation on the top. No word what's going on inside. And we are starting to clear. I think, honestly, I'm gonna reduce the heat a bit to keep it at this low level, but I'm gonna let things sit another 10 minutes because I wanna give some time for those purples to slowly absorb versus more quickly absorbing to the outside. It might be hard for you to see, but the water, I mean, there's not a lot of pigment left, but if you sort of look down, there is like a reddish hue to it. At this stage, I like the temperature that we're at. Let's add 1, 2, 3, 4 tablespoons of white vinegar to our pot, and we're gonna let it go 20 minutes. When you're dealing with yarn cakes or something that has less surface area because the yarn is more compact like this, it can take longer for the colors to absorb overall. So just be patient with vinegar and time, but this is actually making really, really great progress. So again, I'm gonna wait 20 minutes and then we'll come back. After a few hours, the water is almost completely clear and we can go quickly rinse this fiber. We need to let the cakes dry a bit before I unravel it, and once everything's unraveled, that's when I'll do a true wash. But let's go take a closer look at the inside. I can't wait. Whoa. Okay, this is cool, and maybe you guys can see, looks like there's some green on the outside. Some green, and we got purple on the inside. We got breaking. I see green, I see blue, I see purple. I am really, really excited. This cake is so loose that I want to be really, really careful with just a gentle rinse because I don't want, say, the middle to pop out or anything like that. Yeah, there have been times where I felt like there's been some yellows in this color. And maybe it's because we mixed it fresh today. But I see like purple, green, and blue in here, which is awesome. Okay, again, this is pretty much the extent of the rinsing that I'm doing. I kind of want to make sure that there's not going to be any obvious bleeding. But I'm going to go put these cakes through my spin dryer to remove as much liquid as possible. And then let them dry a couple of days. And this is so that way I could wind these onto a PVC pipe nitty knotty now. The PVC pipe can handle the wetness, but when you're playing with wet fibers, you are at more risk of stretching them. Think about when you're blocking a sweater or a lace project, how much you can stretch things when they are wet. And so I prefer to try to get the fiber as dry as possible before potentially stretching it. But anyway, I cannot wait to look at this dry. Oh my, Shelby, these are incredible. I see some forest green, some teal, a hint of purple, and some blue-gray. Ooh, more than a hint of purple. That is awesome. These, I think they've almost dried completely, which is awesome. But now we are going to go unravel them. And I have to say, I am so excited to see what this colorway looks like on the inside. This isn't going to be necessarily the best comparison, but I am going to wind these onto a 2-foot nitty knotty, but in this H configuration, like I would unravel a double-stranded sock blank. This way we can compare them a little closer. Now, if the differences between the two skeins are really subtle, we probably won't be able to tell. They definitely will not be a matched pair, but this should tell us if there's like a glaring difference between them. And it will be a little better comparison with me unraveling them side by side than if I were to wind them onto a 1-foot niddy noddy in the more traditional way, because this will just, I think, be a slightly easier way to compare them. This yarn is so beautiful. The green and dusty purple interplay off one another so nicely. There is absolutely a gradient here, but it is very subtle and very variegated the whole way through. But right off the bat, I do notice a difference between these two skeins. I'm not sure how apparent it is on camera, but this skein has much more, it's not really a white, it's like a pastel gray than this skein. There also seem to be a few more reverse speckles here. When I say reverse speckles, I'm talking to these tiny pastel dots. These tiny dots and lighter speckles happen because of the resist from where the yarn physically crosses over each other, which is one of the awesome parts of cake dyeing in general. I don't think there is any way to wind the two yarn cakes in an identical way. The only way to achieve this would be to take both strands and wind a 200-gram cake together. But as I've shown in the past, you are able to do that, and you get gorgeous colorways that unravel and are beautiful, but it is a significant more effort to unravel them because you have to deal with the untwisting than say this was to unravel today. However, if you want a true matched set, it's then worth the extra effort because then they will actually be matched versus being the same colorway but not feeling like the same dye lot. There are a lot of commercial brands out there, and Madeline Tosh is one example, that in some of the colorways they don't have dye lots because there is a lot of variation within skein to skein because of the techniques that they use. If you wanted to knit with two skeins like this and preserve the gradient, even if they were identical, then you would want to alternate skeins every couple of rounds. This is what I did when I was knitting and designing the Denise shawl. I had multiple gradient skeins and I alternated them to keep that color progression in the shawl itself. But one thing that you could do is if you wanted a 200-gram gradient, make a 200-gram yarn cake, but don't hold the strands together. Have one on the inside and one on the outside, and then dye it. And so you'll get sort of a more continual progression. But I do think that these will work really, really well together. And while, yes, I see more of that pastel in the one on the left, ultimately, they are so similar. And I don't know, I'm just really, really happy. I think the colorway is gorgeous, and the Twilight Gray broke so well. Outside of the cakes, the yarn does have a little bit of texture to it. Not texture, crimp. Not as bad as, say, unraveling a blank, but it's still present. So at the end of filming these conclusions, I'm going to go wash the yarn off camera. I'm going to use some soap, I'm going to wash it, and then hang it up to dry. This will help this little bit of crimp relax and also finally give that wash that the yarn actually needs because we did not do a thorough wash before. Obviously, I check back in if I notice bleeding or anything, but if you don't see the yarn wet again, assume that everything is great. I think when you look from far away, it's hard to appreciate how much the color changes in just small areas. Like even looking in here, you can see purple and green in that one strand, and you see this color breaking on a tiny level in addition to the larger level that makes this yarn really variegated and awesome. Shelby, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode of Dyepot Weekly. I had so much fun dyeing this yarn, and I'm feeling really inspired to play around more with Twilight Gray and yarn cakes. This is one of the more dramatic colors that I see breaking with acid dyes. But as we've shown, it only really breaks in some situations, and it seems to behave differently on different yarn bases. So I think I want to try a yarn cake, but using, say, a superwash yarn like Stroll, and then since we're not dip dyeing, if we're doing this slow kind of technique that we did today, will we actually see some breaking or not? If you would like to learn more about sponsoring an episode of Dyepot Weekly, you can find a link to the listing in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop in the video description and iCard. If the listing is sold out, because slots are limited, stay tuned because they will come back in stock as I have filmed and shipped off the sponsored videos currently in the queue. But the shop is filled with over 100 skeins of hand-dyed yarn featured in my other videos, and so go take a look around. It is really fun. Also, it is almost time to ship the 2019 ChemKnits Hanukkah yarn samplers. There may still be a few pre-order slots left, and once I pack things up, I will release a few more ready-to-ship ones. I just want to make sure that I have the counts and everything correct. You can find a listing to this yarn sampler also in the video description. The Hanukkah special will start on the first night of Hanukkah, December 22nd. Each night there will be a new yarn dyeing video, and that corresponds to one of the mini skeins that will be in the samplers. And so it's just another way to interact with these videos. Ugh, I cannot get over this colorway. I love it so much. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on so you never miss a new video. I hope that you guys all have a wonderfully colorful day. Bye, everyone.